Hello everybody, today's video is going to be about knots. In this video I'm going to go over the different connections that I utilize for my everyday fishing. Due to time constraints, I'm not going to actually be tying the actual knots on this video. Perhaps down the road I'll go ahead and do individual videos, but what I'll do is that I'll assign a number for each named knot. And then if you go to the description, I'll put a link to an existing video that someone has already done that pretty much represents how I tie that knot. For my braid to mono connection or braid to mono leader connection, I utilize two different knots. One is the FG knot and two is the Uni to Uni knot. Remember, I'll have corresponding links to videos to how to actually do these knots, and they'll be corresponding by these numbers here. Now for the number one, the FG knot, that is a excellent top-notch knot that's out there, both in regards to its profile. Is the slimmest profile that you can get, meaning that it will go through your guides and wind onto your reel without a problem. It is that thin. Two is that it's got a really high breaking strength, meaning that it will tied correctly, it will have pretty much equal to or more so than the breaking strength of either your braid or your mono, whichever is weaker. The negative part of an FG knot though is that if you do not tie the knot consistently perfect, there's a large chance that it will fail. Since it's a constrictor type knot, meaning that the braid is woven around the mono, and then when it's cinched down, it basically constricts that mono and prevents the pulling apart, kind of like a Chinese handcuffs or finger cuffs. It'll constrict it, and then the more you pull on it, the tighter it grips it. However, like I was saying, is that if you do it incorrectly or you don't cinch it down tightly before you finish the knot, there's a good chance that it'll loosen up and that monoline will just slip out and that knot will fail. For that reason, I only tie this knot while at home. So I have just good, calm situation where I can focus on it, make sure I do all the wraps correctly, make sure I cinch it down correctly, as well as I do two extra steps. One is once the knot is finished and I trim the mono excess, I'll leave just a tiny bit of excess, and then I'll take a lighter and hit that mono end just slightly, and what it'll do is it'll create a little ball on the end of that mono, and that'll help prevent, if those weaves start unraveling just a little bit, that knob at the end of that mono will help prevent it from pulling all the way through. The second thing that I'll do is once the knot is totally completed, I'll hit it with a dab of super glue to make sure it stays cinched down. Now, second is the Uni to Uni knot. That is just a fundamentally solid knot, both because it has really good knot breaking strength, but more to the point, it's a very easy knot, and there's a very low risk chance that you can tie that knot incorrectly. For my leader to hook connections, I actually use a wide variety of different knots depending on the type of bait that I'm utilizing. For live bait and artificials, I use a cray loop knot. The cray loop knot is a very basic knot to physically tie, so that's kind of the primary reason why I use it. The reason why it's important to use a loop knot for live bait and artificials is that it gives by not being directly attached to the hook or the lure, it allows that hook to be able to free swing and to allow that live bait to move around more naturally. And same for the artificial, since it's not bound to the eye of the hook or the eye of the lure, it gives that lure the ability to get some extra movement to make it look a little bit more natural. Now, when I'm using light leader and cut or dead bait, I utilize the Palomar knot. Prime example for when I use this is when I'm yellowtail fishing, where we have a chum bag with a chum line going out, and I'm going to free line a little cut bait. It's not moving, it's just a chunk that I'm going to free drift back into with the current. The reason I kind of focused on that and for the yellowtails is that was the knot we utilized for commercial fishing for yellowtails. The reason being it's very easy knot to tie, especially when your hands are all bloated and cut from being in the water and the fins and so forth. You're still able to tie a Palomar because it's basically tying your shoelaces. And it's also, the knot strength is pretty effective, but the biggest part of it is it's a quick and easy knot. For a heavy leader, and as well as doing like cut bait, and this instance I would be using cut bait for sharks or cut bait for tarpon, and I'm using very heavy lines, say generally 40 pounds and heavier. Basically use the clinch knot or the old fisherman's knot. Not even the improved clinch knot, just the basic 5 twists, stick it back in and snug it down, right? This is I would say a secret guide's knot is that it's not pretty, people look down on it, but when you get into the heavy leader material, it works totally fine. Any big fish guides will verify that it's a perfectly fine knot for those heavy leaders, so you don't have to worry about all the naysayers out there. The one tip I will give you about the clinch knot though is, especially when using those heavy leaders, once you complete tying that knot and you snug it down, before you start using it, before you trim that tag line, hook it to a cleat or something stable or get some pliers and really wrap that and put as much weight on there as you can to make sure that knot is solid before you cut that tag in. And I would still leave a good 1/2 inch depending on the hook and what you're using. If it was a big bait shark or something, I'd use 1 inch or more, okay? Because once you have a extremely amount of pressure, especially with a big fish, they could pull harder than you can with just by your hand. So leave more of a tag, so that'll allow for that little bit of slippage that might occur. And for my last knot is regard to my vertical jigs, specifically when I'm doing like the wreck jigging for some pretty meaty sized fish. I just use a standard Uni knot. It's like, again, it's a guaranteed tied knot because it's very simplistic, but it has very good solid ratings in regards to breaking strength. And I'm not too concerned with that because I'm using really heavy line, heavy leaders, heavy rod. It is a big fish, but that knot is more than capable of staying together for that type of fishing. So that's it. Those are my basic 5 knots that cover all my applications from itty bitty to grandiose. I will notate that outside of the FG knot, the rest of the knots are geared toward ease of tying over the breaking strength, primarily because the usefulness of being able to tie a knot out in conditions is a lot more important than the final percentage of breaking strength. None of these knots are difficult to tie, so that's like the most important part, but all of them have considerable breaking strength to the point where it's not a ratio to have to worry about that you're losing like half the knot strength versus the line strength. So anyways, that is what I use. Feel free to do the same. If I was a brand new angler, I would say if you learn those 5 knots, freshwater, saltwater, you would be solid. If you only wanted to learn how to tie 1 knot and 1 knot only for everything, learn how to do the Uni knot. And that will cover pretty much 100% of the knots that you'll ever need to tie just right there. But anyways, that is my knot guide. Perhaps down the road I will do individual videos on those knots, but otherwise look in the description for these corresponding numbers, and they'll have links to other channels that have done an excellent job and represent exactly or pretty much exactly how I tie them. So anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video. Bye.